Oladel was a young man full of dreams, but burdened by the modest life he led in a small village, surrounded by lush fields and thick forests. His parents had passed away when he was just a boy, leaving him to manage their small farm. Despite the hardship, Oladel worked tirelessly, tending to his crops and livestock with care. In the evenings, as he sat outside his humble thatched hut, he often gazed at the stars, imagining a life of abundance. His closest friend, Akin, would sometimes join him, teasing him about his big dreams. Oladel, you're always talking about building mansions and having more wealth than the chief himself. How will you do that with your little farm? Akin would laugh. But Oladel would smile. Dreams are free, Akin, and who knows? Perhaps one day the gods will smile upon me. Though he loved farming, Oladel was also an excellent hunter. On nights when the farm offered little, he'd venture into the forest to hunt. Hunting gave him peace. It was just him, his bow, and the quiet hum of nature. One crisp morning, Oladel woke up with a determination he hadn't felt in months. The air was cool, and the sun's golden rays illuminated the forest beyond the village. He grabbed his hunting bow, a quiver full of arrows, and a small pouch of provisions. As he walked toward the forest, the village buzzed with activity. Women fetched water from the stream, children played in the fields, and elders sat under the baobab tree, sharing stories of old. But Oladel's mind was elsewhere. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds, insects, and the occasional rustle of leaves. Oladel tread carefully, his eyes scanning for any signs of movement. Hours passed, and though he spotted a few small animals, he let them be, holding out for something bigger, a prize that would fill his belly for days. Eventually, Oladel stumbled upon a clearing. There, grazing gracefully, was the most beautiful antelope he had ever seen. Its fur shimmered in the sunlight, and its movements were elegant, almost otherworldly. Oladel crouched low, his heart pounding with excitement. He nocked an arrow, drawing it back slowly as he steadied his aim. Just as he was about to release, the antelope turned its head toward him. "Please, don't shoot me," the antelope said. The bow slipped from Oladel's grasp, and he stumbled backward in shock. "What? How?" "You can talk," he stammered. The antelope nodded. "Yes, I can, and I beg you, spare my life. I am carrying a child." Oladel blinked, unsure if he was dreaming. A talking antelope. This must be some trick of the forest spirits. "I assure you, it is no trick," the antelope said, her voice calm yet urgent. "If you spare me, I can offer you something far greater than meat." Oladel hesitated, his curiosity piqued. "And what could you possibly offer me?" The antelope stepped closer, her eyes full of wisdom. "Riches, success, and a life beyond your wildest dreams. But only if you agree to a deal." Oladel's heart raced. Could this truly be happening? He thought of his simple life, the struggles, and the dreams he shared with Akin under the stars. "What kind of deal?" he asked cautiously. The antelope explained, her voice steady and clear. "There is a magical lake deep in this forest. Every Monday, you must visit the lake and collect its water. Take it home and bathe with it using a specific white cloth. Do this without fail, and you will find wealth and success beyond imagination. But be warned. If even one day, all will be lost, and your life will spiral into madness." Oladel stood in silence, weighing her words. It sounded too good to be true, but something about the antelope's demeanor convinced him. "All right," he said finally. "I agree." The antelope bowed her head. "Then follow me, and I shall show you the way." The journey to the lake was unlike anything Oladel had experienced. The antelope led him through winding paths, dense thickets, and over trickling streams. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the more magical it seemed. Trees glowed faintly, and the air was thick with the scent of blossoms he couldn't name. Finally, they reached a clearing where the magical lake lay. The water sparkled under the sunlight, radiating a soft golden glow. Oladel stood at the edge, mesmerized. "This is the source of your future fortune," the antelope said. "But remember, the rules are absolute. Do not miss a single Monday." Oladel nodded, filling his bucket with the shimmering water. "I will not forget." The antelope watched him with a solemn expression. "May the spirits guide you." With that, she turned and disappeared into the forest. As Oladel made his way back home, he couldn't help but feel that his life was about to change forever. Returning home with the shimmering water, Oladel carefully followed the instructions the antelope had given him. He fetched the white cloth he had from his mother's belongings and poured the magical water into a large clay pot in his small bathing area. As he bathed, he felt an inexplicable energy coursing through his body. The water felt warm and alive, soothing his muscles and invigorating his mind. By the time he stepped out and dried himself, Oladel felt different, stronger, sharper, and oddly confident. The next day, while tending to his farm, he noticed something unusual. His crops, which had been struggling for weeks, appeared greener and more vibrant. Passers-by commented on their beauty, and by the end of the week, he had sold all his produce at the market for a handsome profit. This was just the beginning. Weeks turned into months, and Oladel's fortunes soared. Word spread about the young farmer who always had the best produce, and soon, wealthy traders sought him out. He expanded his farm, hired workers, and began making more money than he had ever dreamed. He also began to diversify his ventures. With newfound confidence, he started a small business buying and selling livestock, which quickly grew into the largest operation in the region. Villagers were amazed at Oladel's transformation, and he became a symbol of success in the community. But every Monday, without fail, he would journey into the forest to collect the magical water. He kept this secret from everyone, not even sharing it with Akin, his closest friend. By the end of the first year, Oladel had become one of the wealthiest men in the village. He built a grand mansion on the edge of the village, a sprawling compound with tall gates, marble floors, and lavish furnishings. With his newfound status came attention from all corners. Parents of beautiful young women began bringing their daughters to meet him, hoping he would choose them as his bride. After much deliberation, Oladel married two women, Aden and Aoife, both known for their beauty and grace. Aden was kind and nurturing, while Aoife was sharp and ambitious. The two wives quickly adapted to their new life, enjoying the wealth and comfort Oladel provided. They bore him two children, a boy and a girl, who became the pride of his life. Despite the seemingly perfect life Oladel built, his wives couldn't help but notice something strange about him. Every Monday, he would disappear for hours, leaving no explanation for where he went or what he did. At first, they dismissed it as business-related. "Perhaps he's meeting important traders," Aden suggested. But Aif was not so easily convinced. "Why would he keep it a secret from us? What kind of business is done in the forest?" The seed of suspicion grew, and the two women decided they needed answers. One Monday afternoon, as Oladel left for the forest in his luxurious carriage, Adun and Aife hatched a plan. They hired a taxi driver from the neighboring village to follow him discreetly. "We'll stay far enough behind that he won't notice us," Ife said as they climbed into the taxi. The driver, an older man, nodded knowingly. "Don't worry, I've done this kind of work before." The journey was tense. The wives watched as Oladel's carriage turned onto the forest path, growing smaller in the distance. The taxi driver kept his pace steady, ensuring they remained undetected. After what felt like hours, they saw him stop near a dense thicket and step out of his carriage with a large empty bucket in hand. Aden and Ife followed Oladel on foot, careful not to make any noise. They trailed him through the winding paths of the forest until they came upon a clearing. There, before their eyes, was the magical lake, glowing softly under the sun. They watched as Oladel filled his bucket with water, muttering something under his breath. "What is he doing?" Adun whispered, her voice trembling. Ife's eyes narrowed. This must be the secret to his success. They stayed hidden until Oladel began his journey back home. Then they hurried back to the taxi, determined to confront him. When Oladel returned home, he found his wives waiting for him in the grand sitting room. He could sense their tension immediately. "Why do you both look so serious?" he asked, placing the bucket of magical water on the table. Aiden stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Oladel, we followed you today." Oladel's heart sank. He had always feared this day might come. "You followed me?" "Yes," Ife said firmly, her arms crossed. "We saw everything, the forest, the lake, and the water you brought back. What is this about? Why have you kept it a secret from us?" Oladel sighed heavily, sitting down and gesturing for them to join him. "It's not an easy thing to explain, but since you've already seen, I owe you the truth." He recounted the story of the talking antelope, the magical lake, and the deal he had made. He explained the consequences of missing a single Monday and how the water had transformed his life. Adun listened with wide eyes, while Ife remained skeptical. "So, you're telling us that all of this, the wealth, the mansion, everything, is because of that water?" "Yes," Oladel said. "And it is crucial that I never miss a Monday, or we will lose everything." Adun looked worried, but Aoife scoffed. "This sounds like a fairy tale. You're a clever man, Oladel, but I can't believe you'd put so much faith in such a ridiculous story." "You don't have to believe me," Oladel said, his voice rising, "but you must not interfere. This water is the reason we have all of this. Without it, we have nothing." Despite Oladel's warning, doubt lingered in the minds of his wives. Aiden worried about the weight of such a secret, while Ife became increasingly determined to test her husband's claims. The following Monday, as Oladel prepared to leave for the forest, Ife confronted him. "Why not take me with you this time? If this water is so important, I want to see everything up close." Oladel shook his head firmly. "It's not safe, Ife. The deal was made between me and the antelope. Involving others could bring disaster." Frustrated but unwilling to push further, Ife let him go. However, her suspicion grew. A week later, Ife decided to take matters into her own hands. She convinced Adun to help her with a plan to test Oladel's claims. When he returned from the forest with a bucket of magical water, they waited until he stepped out of the room. "I don't think we should do this," Adun whispered, eyeing the bucket nervously. "We have to," Ife insisted. "If he's lying, we need to know." Before Adun could stop her, Ife picked up the bucket and tipped it over, spilling the water onto the floor. At that moment, Oladel walked back into the room. His eyes widened in horror as he saw the empty bucket. "What have you done?" he roared, his voice echoing through the house. Ife crossed her arms. "If the water is truly magical, then one missed bath shouldn't matter, right?" "You don't understand," Oladel said, trembling. "You've doomed us all." Adun began to cry, realizing the gravity of what they had done. But Ife remained defiant, convinced that her husband's story was just a superstition. The effects of missing the ritual were immediate. That night, Oladel couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, his mind racing with dread. By morning, his health had deteriorated. Dark circles appeared under his eyes, and he felt an unshakable heaviness in his chest. When he went to check on his crops, he found them withering. His workers began to quit, citing strange misfortunes in their own lives. Within days, his businesses collapsed. Traders who once begged for his partnership now avoided him. His mansion, once filled with laughter, grew eerily quiet. Eve and Aiden watched in disbelief as their world crumbled around them. The tension in the mansion grew unbearable as the consequences of Ife's actions began to manifest. He avoided his wives, locking himself in his study and refusing to speak to anyone. His once cheerful demeanor had turned somber, and the weight of despair hung heavily on him. Aiden, guilt-ridden, tried to comfort him. "Oladel, maybe we can fix this. Can we not return to the lake and ask the antelope for forgiveness?" Oladel shook his head. "The deal was clear, Aidun. Once broken, there is no turning back." Eve, however, refused to admit fault. "You're blaming me for believing in logic over superstition? You're the one who built our lives on this nonsense." Her defiance only fueled Oladel's anger. "You didn't just ruin me, you've destroyed everything we built together." As word of Oladel's misfortune spread, the villagers' admiration turned into suspicion. People who once praised him now whispered behind his back, speculating about the source of his sudden rise and fall. "Maybe he dealt with dark forces," an elder muttered. "He brought this on himself," another said. Even Aiken, Oladel's closest friend, began to distance himself. "Oladel, you've changed," he said one evening. "Whatever you've done, it's not right." Oladel could only stare at his friend, unable to explain the truth. Desperate for answers, Oladel decided to return to the magical lake. He journeyed deep into the forest, ignoring the aches in his body and the doubts in his mind. When he arrived, the lake was as radiant as ever, but the antelope was nowhere to be seen. "Antelope!" he called, his voice echoing through the trees. "Please, hear me! I need your help!" After a long silence, the antelope emerged from the shadows, her eyes filled with sadness. "Oladel, you have broken our agreement." "I know," he pleaded. "But it wasn't me. My wife, she didn't understand. Please, give me another chance." The antelope shook her head. "The deal was between us, and it was absolute. I warned you of the consequences." "Is there nothing I can do?" Oladel asked, his voice breaking. "There is only one way," the antelope said, "but it comes at a great cost." The antelope explained the only way to reverse the curse. Oladel would have to gather water from the lake one final time, but instead of bathing in it, he would need to pour it into a sacred grove deep within the forest. "This act will appease the spirits," she said, "but it will take everything you gained. Your riches, your family, and even your mind will be at risk." Oladel hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "I'll do it," he said finally. "If it means undoing the pain I've caused, I'll pay the price." The journey to the sacred grove was perilous. The forest seemed to conspire against Oladel, with thick vines blocking his path and wild animals prowling nearby. His body, weakened by days of stress and hunger, ached with every step. But he pressed on, driven by the hope that he could make things right. When Oladel finally reached the sacred grove, he was awestruck by its beauty. Towering trees with golden leaves surrounded a small clearing where the earth glowed faintly. He poured the water from the magical lake onto the ground, and the grove lit up with an ethereal light. A deep, resonant voice filled the air. "Oladel, your sacrifice is accepted, but be warned, the path ahead will not be easy." True to the spirit's warning, Oladel's life was stripped bare. His mansion crumbled, his businesses vanished, and his wives left, unable to endure the hardship. Even his children were taken in by relatives, leaving Oladel alone. He wandered the village, unrecognizable to those who once praised him. Without the magical water, Oladel's mind began to falter. He often spoke to himself, reliving the days of his wealth and glory. The villagers pitied him, but kept their distance, fearing his unpredictable behavior. One day, while wandering the outskirts of the village, Oladel encountered an old man who seemed to recognize his pain. "Son, the road you walk is not the end," the man said. "Sometimes, the greatest riches are found in the lessons we learn." Inspired by the old man's words, Oladel decided to return to his roots. He began farming again, working the land with his bare hands. Though the work was hard, it gave him purpose. As the seasons changed, Oladel's farm began to thrive. Villagers, moved by his determination, started to help him. Slowly, he rebuilt his life, not with magic, but with hard work and community support. One day, Aiden returned, carrying their children. "I was wrong to leave you," she said. "The children deserve to know their father, and I see now that you're a good man, even without riches." Oladel embraced her, tears streaming down his face. Oladel also sought out Ife, apologizing for his anger, and recognizing her skepticism as a lesson in humility. Though she chose not to return, they parted on peaceful terms. With his family by his side, Oladel lived a simple but fulfilling life. He taught his children the value of hard work and the dangers of greed. Years later, Oladel became a respected elder in the village, known not for his wealth but for his wisdom. He shared his story with the younger generation, ensuring they learned from his mistakes. On one quiet evening, as Oladel sat under the stars with his children, he smiled. Though his journey had been filled with trials, he realized he had gained something far greater than riches: a life of meaning, love, and redemption. If you liked this story, please don't forget to support us by liking and subscribing. Make sure you click the notification bell for more. See you next time, bye.